Hey everyone. I hope everyone's doing good tonight. I came on to do a live about a few things tonight. I thought I was talk about the update on the Kristin Smart case. There was um, a judge's order in the case today that happened, so I want to update everyone on that. I would like to talk a little bit about Delphi, and I want to introduce a new case that's new to all of us that I'm going to be covering. So I do plan on doing that as well. So today in the Kristin Smart case, a San Luis Obispo Superior Court judge ruled that Paul and Ruben Flores cannot receive a fair trial in San Luis Obispo County. And that means that the Kristin Smart murder case that was supposed to start. Hey, Mike, good evening. It's so good to see you. So the murder case was supposed to begin on April 22nd. It's going to be moving to a new venue, postponing the trial a month before it was set to begin. This was a little off-putting to me when I heard this news today. I was really hoping for Kristin that we wouldn't have another delay and that the trial would proceed. But the decision that was made sets in motion a new sequence of events that's going to happen, and that's going to determine what might be a suitable location for the trial and when that trial can be scheduled. Hey, Tech Death, good to see you. Hi, Karina, Chihuahua Dawson. Hi, John. How are you guys today? It's good to see you, Chihuahua. I don't remember seeing you in my last live, so always good to have you here. Really good to see you. Hey, John Smith, good to see you too. So anyway, so going back to Kristin, they're going to do a change of venue. Paul Flores is alleged to have killed Kristin Smart after an off-campus Cal Poly party back in May of 1996. I think you guys may have all been here when I started her case. And so anyway, this just really upset me today. It put me in a really bad mood, and I'm really sorry. I'm trying to be on an upbeat note here, but it's just a little sad. I can't believe they waited until the end of March to do this. Why they didn't do this months before, it just really upsets me. But anyway, Ruben Flores, Paul Flores's father, and he are alleged to have partaken in the death of Kristin. Paul is accused of murder in the act or commission of rape, and his father helped conceal the body for well over 25 years. They still have not found Kristin's body either. And so, yeah, it's kind of sad. But the two were arrested finally in April of last year in 2021, 25 years after she disappeared. So it's been a long time coming for the family. And I really, like I said, feel for the family because I know that they have been waiting for Paul to have to face them in court and face the charges against him for what they feel he has done. And for them to have another delay because of the change of venue this late, it is kind of sad. So the judge has to notify the Judicial Council of California, and that's the rulemaking arm of the California court system, about the decision and request help in finding a potential court outside the county of San Luis Obispo that could host the trial. He will have to describe the case and why he made the decision to do this and suggest potential sites for the trial and a fact sheet by the counsel stated all of this. So the counsel will then contact presiding judges and executive officers of any potential courts to identify them, whether the court would have enough space on their calendars that would not be unduly a burden to have this trial. The counsel will discuss the circumstances of the case with the potential courts, including the estimated length of the trial, security problems, workload that would be required of the new court and costs, the presiding judge's assessment of the potential court's ability to conduct the trial, and the demographic characteristics of the new location are also considered. And a suitable court site should be able to handle the news media, because it's going to be huge, staffing needs, and the security for the defendants and the victims. The counsel will attempt to identify within 2 weeks at least 3 options for potential courts that can handle this case, but the number of options and the time it takes to find them is going to depend on the circumstances of the case and which courts say they can take it. So once options are identified, a hearing is going to be held where the defense and the prosecution argue their opinions on which court the trial should move to. And the judge will have to decide at the end of the hearing, after both sides submit their arguments. This hearing is supposed to happen at the earliest convenience the judge and parties are available. So the new date of the trial is also usually discussed at this hearing. So we should know at that hearing, hopefully, when the new trial date will be. Hey, little Pookie, good to see you. Thank you for joining. Van Ruin will have to tell the counsel of his decision, and the counsel will notify the potential courts on whether they'll be holding the trial. Once the trial is scheduled, both parties will have to figure out accommodations to attend the trial in the new location. The district attorney's office will still prosecute the case. So the district attorney from San Luis Obispo will still prosecute this case, but the jury will be from the new location. Hey, Brenda, I am currently talking about the update that happened in the Kristin Smart case today regarding the change of venue that was granted for the trial that was supposed to start in April. I'm going to be talking about Delphi after this. So, but yes, I will be talking about Delphi. Once the trial is scheduled, both parties will have to figure out, like I said, where the accommodations, how they're going to do that, and how they're going to be able to attend the trial in this new location. You're very welcome. Hey, God's country, it's good to see you. The district attorney's office will still prosecute this case, but the jury is going to be picked from the new location. So that's something to remember. Whenever you have a change of venue, the jury pool gets pulled from the location of the new location, because that's why they're moving the trial. They're moving the trial. You're very welcome, little Pookie. The reason they move the case is because they don't want the jury pool tainted, which is what they've argued that would happen in this case if it was held in San Luis Obispo. So the court determined today that Paul and Ruben would not get fair trials if the trial were to go ahead and proceed in that venue. So that's why they are going to be choosing the juries or the jurors from the new location. It's going to probably be months. Sadly, the new date will probably be months after the April date that we had, because there's a couple of reasons. It's going to take at least a month or longer to find a location, to just pick a location and everybody agree on that. Those courts and those locations already have their own trial schedules. So another county's trial is going to have to take time to find room on their schedule. And this is going to be a big trial. Just remember, it's been 25 years. So this case is not going to be something that's a really quick case to go through. So with COVID and everything, all of our courts in the country are behind. A lot of things were postponed. Lots of things were pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And so this is going to be a problem. And especially in California, one of the largest court systems in our country, if not the largest. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see what transpires next. But I will tell you that one of the things that I found interesting about all of this was they've only had, in San Luis Obispo County, they've only had 4 change of venues in cases like this. Only 4. And now Kristin's one of those. And the 2001 trial of Rex Krebs was pushed back 9 months after it was moved to Monterey County. So we're just going to have to expect that it's going to be several months and potentially up to a year before this trial will be ready to begin in the new location. There is a status hearing to discuss the plan moving forward for April the 4th, and I'll update everybody after that status hearing. But yeah, I was very, very, very sad to hear this happened. John Smith, what details are we talking about? Oh, just send details into as many crime channels as you can. I suggest the community is paramount in helping law enforcement solve crimes. Yeah, John, if you have a case that you want to have covered, or you feel more people need to see it or whatever, what you can do is email those to me. You can email the case to me and the information. My email is on the about page of my channel. You can find it there. Unfortunately, YouTube frowns on us giving those out, so you have to go look for it. But you can email me there. And then also, Chihuahua gave a great suggestion for you to send the details of the crime. So just the basics. You just want to give the basics of when the crime happened, what year, what's the status of it right now, and is it a cold case? Are they still getting leads on the case? Whatever that is. And then you can start sending it to podcasters, or you can start sending it to YouTubers like myself and asking them if they will cover the case. You can also make posts in Reddit. There are a ton of true crime discussion groups that have millions of people in them. So if you really want to get your case out there, that's a really quick way to, by just going in and creating a post about your case, about the details of it, who she was, what you know about the case so far. But anything, that links to it, like you could add a link for newspaper articles or anything that might have been on television. And I know it's very difficult from a case that goes back to 1977. That's really a long time. But those are some of the things that you can do with that. Hold on one second. I just need to pull something up. on my computer. So just give me a moment to do that. We're going to jump here into Delphi, and I wanted to talk about something when we, you're welcome, John. Thank you for asking. There are so many cases out there, and sadly, there are so many cases. Thank you, Chihuahua. There's so many cases that need covered, and sadly, there are so many people that need to be covering things. That's the way I look at it. The more we can cover cases and talk about them and get people thinking about them again, you never know when that might rattle a tree of tips from someone who is like, oh, I remember that. And I was whatever. I mean, people think it's astronomically not going to happen, that the odds are just not in favor of that. But I just feel that the more eyes and the more people that hear about cases, the better we are. Now, when I started doing all of this, I was completely 100% into Delphi, and I still am. Delphi is my it is my foundation of a case that I want to cover, and that is true and dear to my heart. But there are so many others out there, and I want to do right by those cases as well. And I don't want my channel to just be about one case. So I hope my community understands that and will grow with me with that, and know that there are going to be other cases that we discuss. So I wanted to talk about, when we talked about Delphi a few days ago, I was talking about CSAM and online presence of our children and how dangerous that can be, and all the things that we can do to try to protect them, how the world has come to not really know the extent of predators that are preying on our children everywhere, and especially online. I was shocked. I mean, I really, truly was shocked when I started investigating this. And when I went and started looking into, just in Indiana, because again, Delphi is my foundation case. So just when I started going and looking about this stuff pertaining to Indiana, I was absolutely floored. There are podcasters out there right now on YouTube that are actually just citizens like you and I, and they are going out there and they are capturing these predators who have been talking and catfishing girls and boys online, young, underage, preteens, teens, and sometimes even younger children. There was one that I watched the other night, and it was a man who went to a Walmart to meet a 12-year-old girl and her 19-day-old sister. And what this man had described that he wanted to do to this 19-day-old baby, I'm not kidding you, it was enough to make you just lose it. I had no idea that there were people in this world that wanted to do these kinds of things. And it's just sad. But there's a shocking truth about which families in the United States should be aware. This truth is every bit as terrifying as it is essential to know. Excuse me. Around 750,000 of American teenagers and young children go missing every year. 750,000. That is so many kids. And this is, our children are our futures. They are the most precious thing in this world, are our children. And we are failing them so badly. We are so failing them. In fact, one child is lost every 40 seconds. Every 40 seconds. I mean, it's just crazy. It's really interesting, John, that you're talking about this because um there are people out there that sexualize the Disney characters. Um that's something that's out there as well. Um and these are predators that are doing this. It's just a perversion that goes beyond human imagination. Now, as frightening as the one child lost in every 40 seconds is, that figure, when broken down, aspects of it can be put in a more reassuring context. Probably the thing parents fear most is that their child's going to be abducted, seized by a stranger, perhaps sexually assaulted and murdered. Just give me a moment. I got to take a drink of something. My water. I know as a parent that was one of my fears. As a grandparent, it has been even a bigger fear for me of of our children um, being taken. The better news, though, is that of the enormous figure of those kids who are going missing, only about 1/100th of 1% are taken by strangers. So even though all of these kids are going and all these kids are missing, a lot of times it's custodial parents taking the children. Remember that it's still not good. I mean, it still relates to 100 children a year, over 100 children a year being taken by strangers. Um, and that to me is absolutely unacceptable because to me, one child is unacceptable. Um, but this means that more than 100 families, sets of parents, and their wider community will be devastated by this horrendous impact, which is caused by the actions of these sick and ill, dangerous criminals over the coming 12 months. And so, nevertheless, I mean, far more children run away than are taken by strangers to be discovered later, often with their tails between their legs. A further significant number are taken by family members, often the result of a custody dispute, or maybe the prospect of such a stressful hearing leads parents to take the law into their own hands. Such action causes enormous heartache, but it can also be understood. As I said, our children are the most important thing in our lives. Um, the thought of losing them can cause anyone to act irrationally and behave completely different than normal. And I will be honest, one of my biggest fears when I was younger, before I had children, um, pardon me if I get teary here, I really apologize. But if one of the things that I always worried about was if I had children, what happens if something happens to one of them or both of them or whatever? But you just worry so much about that. So when I was 27 and my son was 3 on Christmas Day, he was diagnosed with cancer. A totally healthy child, absolutely totally healthy, and had never really been sick. And he, about 4 days before, had started showing flu-like symptoms. nothing crazy, just flu. And come to find out, he had a tumor in his abdomen the size of a football. My life changed forever. We went through 10 months of chemo and radiation and remission, where we thought we had beat it, and then relapsed and relapsed again, and finally we lost him in October of the following year. So I can tell you that fear that we have, is the reality of it is far beyond anything that you can even imagine. And as you can tell, even today, it still brings up so much emotion for me. And my heart goes out to Abby and Libby's parents, because no one should ever have to bury their child. No one. Sorry guys. Let me grab my my water and get my composure back here so we can move on. Children get lost when they hurt themselves, they can't get home, or they're helped by well-meaning strangers, whatever. But more appear to be being lost when a miscommunication is all that has happened. But nevertheless, a great relief, as one of the above brings when it comes to light, that the child is actually okay and the child is coming home. Thank you, Tech Death. Thank you guys very, very much. That means a lot. And I don't share that easily, but it's just something I think that people need to understand, that emotion is raw. And even for me, all these years later, I lost him in 1988, and here we are, and still talking about it can bring up just extremely raw emotion. So, you know what? I think I'm here doing this because he wants me here. Oh, little Pookie, I didn't know that about you. And we all belong to a club that we should never have to belong to. So I'm really sorry for your loss as well. And thank you, Chihuahua. He certainly is. So let's see here. Where were my notes? So the good news for parents is that the high number of children who do go missing every year, well over 99% of them are found safe and well. Not that such an outcome eases our unimaginable fear, of course, that comes from discovering that a child is missing. It doesn't offer any relief for the tiny percentage of parents who never get to recover their children. The cases that I'm going to be covering, the cases where the children are still missing today, and the cases where they're no longer missing, but they were murdered. So, that number and those percentages do nothing for those families. I can't imagine. I know how bad my loss hurts. I can't imagine being a parent whose child has gone out, whether it be to a party or, went out for a walk. I read just today, a little 12-year-old girl in Arizona, in a really small town in Arizona. I have friends who actually live in it, Safford. She went out for a walk, 12 years old, and didn't come home. And it was in broad daylight. And they found her in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And the man's been arrested that took her. I read that this morning. And I'm like, can you imagine that family getting that knock on the door from the police that, hey, guess what? Your child has been recovered, thank God, but we don't know what condition she's in. We don't know what's happened to her. And this man took her all the way across the country, clear across the freaking country. I mean, I just can't even imagine what that must feel like to a parent. And as our parents, our primary function is to protect our kids. It's to protect our offspring. Um, you know, we hold that drive biologically. You've heard the saying, mother bear. I mean, don't poke her because, she will eat you. And I think, you know, morally, socially, it drives us. We all feel that way towards our kids. Don't hurt our kids. Don't mess with our kids. And then when we fail, even though the fault does not lie with us, our guilt will never, ever flow away. So when I just said those words, I hope you guys are thinking about the Patties, the Germans, and the Williams. Because they feel like they failed Abby and Libby. I guarantee you Derek feels that way, being the fact that he was there on the trails at the time Bridge Guy was. Now, we know law enforcement has said that they believe that Bridge Guy spent 20 minutes there with the girls and that everything was over by 3:30. And we know what time Derek arrived. And to realize later that your child may have been monstrously murdered or horrifically being assaulted while you were there looking for her, it's something I can't even imagine that he has to live with every day. I pray for Derek often. Despite the frightening high number of the amount of kids that are going missing every year, it actually has been falling, believe it or not. There are many reasons for that, and perhaps most importantly among them is that the cell phones are more and more widespread, and parents are making sure that their children have them. And it makes communication so much easier and so much quicker. All of us as parents can attest to having that sinking feeling when you call your child or you call your grandchild and you don't get an answer, when you know they're supposed to be somewhere and they know that they're supposed to answer your phone calls. We've all probably had that, and sometimes they either forget or they get busy or they're playing or whatever it might be, and they just forget to answer their phone or check it. But in this day and age, sex offenders are being better tracked. They're they so-called call it treated and prevented from engaging in criminal pursuits. I don't know that I agree with that completely. You do, John, as your kids grow older, those preteen years between 12 and 15 for a girl, to me, that's their most vulnerable time, their most absolute vulnerable time. Being a woman and knowing what it was like for me during those formidable years, I understand why. Many people, though, will counter that argument that the internet has opened up new ways for those who have these wicked intents to get access to our kids. And I think we've seen that now with the Abby and Libby case. I think we can sit and look at everything that's come out just since December. with the whole CSAM and the catfishing and the Anthony Shots profile and so on and so forth, to see that makes sense, that the internet has actually opened new pathways for these predators to get at our kids. There are a lot of cases of online grooming, a lot. There is a lot of that going on, and I guess the question is, Nightbot's here. Yeah, he's my friend, little Pookie. When I don't have, or when I'm having a much bigger live than I'm having tonight, sometimes bots need to be here to help keep the riffraff under control. So when I was talking about the whole grooming, I guess the question is, do they stop there, or do they actually try to meet these kids they're grooming? What is their final reason for what they're trying to do? Do they want to just get pictures from them or videos from them? Do they just want to have the chats that they have with them, or do they really want to actually have a physical meeting? I know you're not riffraff. You are absolutely not riffraff. But so these kids, they talk among themselves. They talk about these people that they meet online and that they're talking to in these chat situations. And a lot of times our kids are not even aware that and I would say 99% of the time, they're not even aware that they're being catfished. I mean, as an adult here, being on Reddit, I'm going to throw that out there again, because being on Reddit and having a sub on Reddit is quite enlightening. You don't know who you're interacting with at all. It is such an anonymous place. And that's what Reddit was all about. I think it was there. People could go there. They could read. They could, post about things, comment if they chose to or whatever. But yeah, it's extremely anonymous. And you have no idea who is on the other side of that keyboard. And even when people are, I mean, some of the FBI stuff that I have read about these cases, and especially these CSAM cases where it is catfishing involved, these guys go to all kinds of lengths to make themselves appear to be somebody that they're not. They have very good pictures. They have pictures of nude pictures that they can send to these kids, showing that somebody that is obviously not them. And it's really easy to see how they manipulate and they turn all this stuff onto the child and get the child thinking, wow, this person really is interested in me. This person really likes me. This person is sending me gifts. It's, I agree with you, John. I hope that they do get into the dark web soon, because there is a lot happening out there. And it's, I don't know. It's just one of those, oh, Chihuahua, I'm really sorry. I didn't see that, honey. I'm so sorry. We don't, YouTube does not like capital letters. And so it's considered just rude, I guess. So that's why it doesn't like it when you do all caps or whatever. So that's why Nightbot is telling you that. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. Um, the growth of the internet has been exponential. We all can agree with that. It gets bigger and bigger every day. Um, but I also believe that because of that, schools are undertaking teaching our kids of safety awareness around the computer. But I think it needs to be even more. And I think we need to go younger. Kids are being introduced to the internet at such young ages. Um, like I was thinking about it today because I watch my 4-year-old grandson every day. And I was thinking about it because he has his own iPad. And I'm like, this kid is an absolute whiz when it comes to looking things up on YouTube. YouTube is his friend. It's his place. It's where he likes to go. He watches marble racing videos. He loves to watch videos about tornadoes. He likes to watch videos about monster trucks, anything that has to do with fire engines, real fires, fire trucks, things like that. So, hey, gang, good to see you. Welcome. And yeah, little Pookie, I believe it was, honestly, because I mean, the government's the one who really started the internet anyway, so it doesn't surprise me. Um, yeah, it's okay, Chihuahua, no problem at all. Um, so just you're fine, you're totally fine. I'm just glad he didn't boot you. So, because what'll happen is if it does happen, I think it's for like 3 minutes, and then you can talk again. So but I do apologize. Um, I think there's a lot to be said um for these companies that are creating these apps and they are targeting our young people. Yes, gang, we are. We're talking about CSAM, the internet, and everything around the Anthony Shots profile right now. Um, I think that one of the things that we need to demand is that these companies make our kids safer instead of allowing these predators such easy access to them. Um, that's one of the things that I have a problem with Facebook, especially Instagram, especially because if you look and watch their sessions that they've had in front of Congress when they're asked questions about their product or whatever, they're all about protecting their subscribers. They're all about the protection of the people who use their platforms. Well, that may very well be true, but you need to protect our kids. You need to protect our children, and you're not doing it. They allow all kinds of things to go on online where they do nothing to stop it. So what can we as consumers do? Well, that's one of the things that you have to look at from your city level. You have to start. I've always said, politicians or politics always begins at home. It's all about what affects us in our daily lives. Yes, everything going on in Washington has an effect on us, but the biggest effect on us is what's happening locally. So when you're talking about these topics about CSAM and predators and online things, let's start with our schools. Let's start with our local schools and have them, discussing how to make our kids safe and making them understand that sending photographs of themselves to someone on the internet, that's there forever. And there are all kinds of software out there, especially if they send their faces, that can recognize them. Um, Facial recognition software, it's a real thing. And, this is something that could hurt them forever. It's just, um, it's just sad. And I, I'm going to keep harping on it. I know, but everybody's going to get tired of hearing it. Um, I think one of the things that bothers me about when our teenagers go missing is that law enforcement notoriously always wants to say, "Oh, they're fine. They just ran off to friend's house and didn't tell anybody." Um, I think it happens more often than not, and I think it happens in small town America almost 100% of the time. They just don't think anything's wrong. And I think when we look at what happened in Delphi, you can actually see that. You can actually see where, they originally said, well, maybe they walked home, or maybe they, went to friends and didn't tell anybody, or whatever. And I'm like, these girls were good girls. I don't think for a moment that Abby would have stressed her mother out with her not knowing where she was. Um, Anna was a single mom, and they were like, best friends, and she would not have made her mother worry about where she was. So I don't think that that is something that police need to jump at. I think we need to in my opinion, I think we need to have more people paying attention and treating it as, I would rather the police treat it as something awful and have it be not, than go the other direction, because we've all seen from statistics that everything that happens within the first 24 hours that children go missing is critical. Every single thing that happens and what law enforcement does to try to find them is critical. Every hour they go missing is more likely that they're going to end up deceased. So, and especially if it is an abduction by a stranger. So I just, they, their mindset needs to change a little bit, and not think that, oh, everything's going to be fine. In Carroll County, there was no wonder why they felt that way, because Tobe Lesenby comes out and says multiple times in this case that every missing person they found in Delphi, when they had missing persons, they found them. And so when Abby and Libby went missing, he was thinking statistically, they're going to be found. They're going to be fine. I go back to the time of year it was, the fact that it was cold. It was going to be below freezing after dark. The girls weren't dressed for that kind of environment at all. And they were by a creek. They were dropped off at a trail by a creek. So that whenever you put water involved in below zero temperatures in winter in the Midwest, it's, you know what I mean? It's going to be an issue. There's going to be problems. And the thought of them falling and being hurt, when they call, I go back to this, and I hate to harp on it because we can't change it. But when they called off that search, as a parent, I would have lost my shit. I would have lost it. Because I know people stayed out, and I know, hey, Charismatically, it's so good to see you. Thank you so much for coming. My heart is with you tonight. So when they called off that search, and the possibilities the girls could have fallen and been hurt, it just didn't make any sense to me. And it was this year that I saw the interview around the 5th anniversary with Tobe. I think it was Wish TV that did it, but he said it was a big mistake and he regrets it. He knows that that should never have happened. I know that the location the girls were in was not ideal, and it was dangerous, and that it was treacherous and all of those things. But I also know that when you have two teenage girls missing, you throw everything but the kitchen sink at trying to locate them, which means you bring in every light from every construction site that's within 50 miles of you to light the place up. They had a major Air Force base not far from them. They could have reached out and asked for generators, whatever it was they needed to put lights out there and try to light that trail up. There were no leaves on the trees. They could have seen things, because my feeling is by doing that, look what they did. They gave up the chance of finding real evidence after the crime, and even possibly Bridge Guy himself, if he was hiding in that location, or the path he left, for sure. There are so many things about Delphi that we don't know, and it's really hard to grasp and make theories and good assumptions without having an absolute precise timeline of when things transpired, and we need more. And I think it would have helped if we would have had that sooner than we did. It's really hard, and I'm not bashing law enforcement. Please do not think that I'm doing that, because I believe that law enforcement does a really hard job. It's so easy to be critical of them. It is not a job I would want. A lot of these law enforcements are in districts that are extremely poor. They don't have a lot of money. The police are completely funded by their cities and counties. And so depending on how that city is run and that county, they may have very little money and funds to do some of the things that we see on TV that we think are supposed to happen in every case. And I think that that's where sometimes the armchair detective that we kind of get called out about being is true, because we are so critical of what's not being done. And John Smith, the NSA, I think, could help, maybe possibly, in some of this. I know Homeland Security has been involved in the Abby and Libby case. I don't know to what extent. Hey, Colette. We also know that the welcome. Thank you for joining us. We also know that the U.S. Marshals have also been involved. So we have a lot of people and jurisdictions that are working on this case. I believe NASA was even called in to help if that rumor can be proven. But, it's, like I said, it's just really easy to point fingers and be a Sunday morning quarterback, basically. It's or Monday morning or whatever they call it. After the fact, it's so easy to see. We see things now that, in the moment when everything is frantic and everybody is emotions are running high, and decisions and snap decisions and things would have to meld or fall together, I guess. So it's easy to see how things get missed or get messed up. But what bothers me most about this case in general is that I believe, because of the things that were done in the first 24 hours, that crime scene was compromised. That crime scene was absolutely compromised, and they didn't know it was a crime scene. And I get that. I get they didn't, but they should never have left. They should never have left out there. And why they didn't search that area doesn't make any sense to me. That was something that always has bothered me as well. So I hear that the murder sheet, they did drop some more information I listened to the stuff about the stepbrother and the sister, the stepsister. I find it very compelling of talking to what kind of a person Tony Klein is. It definitely speaks to him being a violent, just not a nice person, a violent man with a violent past and a violent history. But I also think things speak a lot to Kagan. And I don't think we need to just be focusing on Tony, because one of the things that's jumped out at me on that last drop of information by the murder sheet was the fact that his brother said, with really no doubt at all, that he thought the bridge guy voice was Kagan. And I just thought that really took me back to hear him say that in that interview. That I was not expecting that at all. So, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there for sure. And I'm going to be doing another video on that very topic probably within the next week. So you guys can be looking for that. But I'm going to move on because I want to introduce you all to the new case that I am going to be covering. And I'm actually glad that I'm doing this now because of Kristin's case going to be delayed. And I really wasn't expecting that and thought we would be going through the trial with her. But now that we won't be doing that, we're going to have... I agree. But with that being said, Tech Death, I understand that that's what you think as well. And I don't think it sounds necessarily like a young voice. I think it sounds like a smoker's voice. Somebody who smokes and has a very raspy, vocal cords have been kind of damaged from smoking. That's what I get from it. Oh, thank you, John. Very, very, very kind of you to say. They found Naomi. They did. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful. Wow. I had not heard that. That is really cool. So little Pookie said that Sheriff Grady in Florida rounded up nearly 100 recently and 4 from Disney. It's rampant. Can you imagine pedophiles working in Disney? That just is like, oh, that just gets me. I'm like, oh my God. It's just crazy. She's dead. No, God. Oh my Lord. Another one. It's just so sad. Now I get it. I get that there was a reason that they put the billboards in 46 states, but I do believe that in my heart of hearts, because people ask me this, they're constantly sending me emails and asking me who my POI is or what I think. I don't have a POI in Delphi. I never had a POI in Delphi. I've had people that I thought possibly looked maybe like they might be a person of interest, but I've never felt comfortable coming forward with that because I don't think there's enough information out there for us to actually have a POI. I think we have to go with the information at hand and the facts as we know them. We can't add things that we don't know, or we can't flip the narrative to make it seem like something else. And so that's always been my feeling on that. So I want to talk to you guys tonight about a girl that disappeared in 1997 and is still missing. A friend asked me to cover this case, and I started looking into it at the beginning of the week. and I've been spending hours a day going over her case. And the similarities that I'm finding between her case and the Delphi case is just crazy. And I think the reason that it's there is because they're both small town America. So her name was Kemberly Ramer, and her name is spelled, hold on a second, I want to change something. Just give me a moment, guys. I just want to create something, so give me a moment. Oh, Ramer. All right. Let me pull up. I'm gonna pull up her poster so you guys can see her. So just give me a moment for that. And share my screen. Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to get her picture up, and it's not. It's not working. Hold on one moment. Let me find this. Let's see. There you are. Well, that's not going to work. I should have had this done. Sorry, guys. Just bear with me for 1 minute. There she is. Open. Let's see if I can get it to open. Okay, there we are. Share my screen. Sorry, it should not have taken me this long. I don't know. Sometimes, sadly, sometimes StreamYard does not like me at all. So hopefully, there you go. All right. So this is a picture. Thank you so much. So this is a picture of Kemberly Ramer. Oops, hold on. One more thing I got to fix. There we go. Okay. Yeah, Kimberly Ramer is her name. And hold on. She was a beautiful, beautiful young woman. And hold on 1 second. I want to get to my notes. There they are, my notes. Okay, so she was 17 years old at the time that she disappeared, and she had clear braces on her teeth. It was August 15th of 1997. And she went missing in OPP, Alabama. Her mother's name is Sue. Her parents were divorced. Her dad's name is Kenny. And there are massive holes in this story. It's one of the first things that I figured out when I started searching for information on the case and about her. They had no custody agreement between mom and dad. And actually, Kimberly had an older sister who was 19 months older than her, or 17 months older than her, and her name was Kristin. And the mother lived on the Florida-Alabama line. So she lived in Florida, and Op is on the other side of the Florida-Alabama line. So there's two states involved here, as Kristin and Kim, as they called her, Kim, but it's spelled K-E-M. Kim would go back and forth between parents' homes. She would go to mom's house, she would go to dad's house. It was summer, it was August, it was right before the start of school, her senior year. And so she was staying with her father. She had gone back and was staying with dad, with Kenny. She was an extremely smart girl. She was extremely athletic. She played softball. She was a cheerleader. And she just excelled academically, and she was extremely outgoing. She had a lot of friends, very popular. She never really had a boyfriend. She just had a pretty normal, calm life by everything that was apparent to see. She had plans to attend the South Alabama University. She wanted to become a physical therapist. Her mom was a nurse, and she's never been found. And she went missing from her bedroom in her father's house. So this is the backstory that gets us where we need to be. She'd been staying with her mother, but went back to Op to stay with her father before school started. So she needed to get things done before senior year. And one of those things was getting her senior pictures done. She wanted to do some shopping. There was just like things she needed to get completed. The day she went missing, she woke up, it was a Friday, and she had a lot to do that day. She needed to go get the senior pictures done. She wanted to hang out with friends. She had a softball game later that day. She also wanted to go back out and hang out with friends after the softball game was over. She went back home after the game to get a shower and go back out because it was the last weekend of summer for her, and she wanted to have a good time. And this was around 9 p.m. Now, her father, Kenny, was also showering and getting ready to go out, and he was going to hang out with his girlfriend that night, but his plan was not to come home. So he was going to be staying the night at his girlfriend's house. And we don't know if she ever told him where she was going. That's unclear. But he did tell her that she had to be back home by 11:30 p.m. because that was her curfew. She always kept the rules. She was not a girl who broke the rules, and she wasn't one to get into trouble. So, her dad just reminded her, hey, your curfew is at 11:30, you need to be back home. So they went their separate ways, and around 10 o'clock, Kenny went to see his girlfriend and decided to stay there and didn't come back home. It is unclear if he called the house to check on Kim, to see if she had gotten home by 11:30 or not. It's just unclear. The information that's out there about the case doesn't really say one way or the other. The next day, Kenny comes home. He was planning on going golfing. He stopped by the house to get his golf clubs. He saw her car. No, this account, not too much. I'm just starting this new case. So, I hope you'll listen. It's a really, really sad and intricate case. So Kenny, her dad, was going to go golfing that day, and he had stopped by the house early in the morning, which we don't know exactly the time, but I presume it must have been pretty early. It was August. It was southern Alabama. It's extremely hot, and most golfers want to get on the course early so they can get their rounds in before the heat of the afternoon. So I'm assuming it was early when he was there picking up his clubs. He saw her car in the driveway and he assumed she was in the house. So he just wrote her a note. She was supposed to go out that day and sell magazines with friends, and he did not see her. And it was Saturday the 16th. We have no idea in everything that's out there about the case when Kenny actually came home that day. But Sue was out on the lake with her new boyfriend all day until 1 a.m. on Saturday. I'm sorry, Sunday. 1 a.m. on Sunday. She got home and realized that she had quite a few missed calls from Kenny. So she called him back and it didn't reach him. And she figured that it wasn't an emergency, so she went to sleep. This whole period of time is a mess because no one knows anything for sure about the timeline from Friday at 10 p.m. until he realized she wasn't in the house. And we've talked about timelines here before and how important the timeline is for law enforcement to get accurate so that you can start building a case and working it and knowing what direction you have to go in. Kenny called Sue again and asked if Kimberly had gone back to her house, but her car was in the driveway, and Sue was like kind of shocked, and she was like, no, she had been out fishing all day. And this was when Kenny says that he's not seen or talked to Kimberly since Friday at 10 p.m. So Sue immediately jumps in her car and she drives to Kenny's house. And it was an odd situation because Kenny had been calling all of Kimberly's friends to try and locate her. Some of them came over to the house and said it had to be her boyfriend. He has to have her, and it wasn't letting her go. And the friends are going back and forth with this story. And Sue and Kenny are standing there thrown for a loop because not a single person, including her own sister, Kristin, knew of any boyfriend. So they didn't know who these kids were talking about. They soon find out why why they didn't know about him and why he may have been a secret. He was in his 20s. He was way older than her, and they met at one of her softball games. He had been married once before and had 1 or 2 children. And they had only been dating 1 or 2 weeks. So they went down to his house, which was just a short way away, like a few minutes, down the street from Kenny, the dad. And no one was home. So they filed a police report around 9 a.m. on Sunday, August 17th. So she goes missing at last time anyone sees her is 10 p.m. on Friday night, August 15th, and she's not reported missing until Sunday morning around 9. And she hadn't been seen for 24 hours. And and at this point, nobody has been searching for her either. So at this point, the family and Kristin's boyfriend, Jeremy Anderson, were going through the house. And no one can recall if they checked her room or not. But when they did finally check her room, it was in complete disarray. No one can recall if her door was open or if her door was closed. I'm going with shut because if Kenny came home to retrieve his golf clubs to go golfing, he would have noticed if she was not in her room, if her door had been open. Yes, little Pookie, she has been missing for 25 years. It appeared that she had gotten herself ready for bed. Her purse, her keys, her wallet with all of her money were all present. Her car was parked in the driveway under a carport. And her contacts had been taken out and she couldn't see without them. She also had not taken any shoes with her, so she was barefoot. There were pictures on her wall in her bedroom that had been knocked off, and there was a pillow that had been shoved between the headboard and the wall, which seemed a little odd. And so, other than that, that's how the room looked. So she didn't take anything with her. Something happened in that room, and law enforcement worked tirelessly to try to figure out what had happened. Since this was such a close-knit town, once people began to learn Kimberly was missing, people began to show up at Kenny's house. We don't know if people came into the house, which would have been a crime scene. And all the family, including Jeremy Anderson, went into that bedroom to look. Jeremy was touching multiple things in the room, and Sue kept turning to look behind her and tell him over and over to please stop touching things. We don't know what happened yet. Hey, Jerry Ball, it's good to see you. No, you're right. It's never a good sign for a purse to be left or a cell phone. There is no apparent sign of forced entry at all. So he kept touching all these items. He kept being told by Sue to stop it. Authorities said there were no signs of a struggle outside of her bedroom. There was no forced entry. They used luminol in her room, and there was no blood left behind in the room. It absolutely made no sense. It was like she just disappeared into thin air. So either she let someone in that she knew, she left the house on her own without shoes and all of the things that a girl would take with her purse, her money, her contacts, because she can't see without them, or glasses. Or somebody got into the house who had a key. Kenny said the door leading into the house was like slightly ajar above the lock. And it might have been pushed in because you could see light through that ajar space. It wasn't huge. It was just enough that you could see light. No one could remember when asked if this was normal or if this was like this before she disappeared. So nobody knows if that's pertinent or not. There was no forensic evidence found in her room. They do not know if her car was checked or not. I don't know. I wasn't able to find that. After a couple of days, they asked the Alabama Bureau of Investigation to come in and help. And this small community didn't have the kind of crime. They didn't ever have this kind of crime. I went back and looked at their crime history, and they rarely ever have a sexual assault, no murders. And now, like, I think last year or the year before statistics, I think it was the year before statistics, they have a few more sexual assaults and assaults than they did back then. But yeah, it's like, this town is not known. It's very, very small. The police force of OP had no experience in this kind of a crime. And they didn't know what to do next, which is why they called in the Alabama Bureau of Investigation. And then shortly after that, the FBI gets involved. And there is no real understanding as to why that happened, but we'll get into that here in just a second. There is one thing that one can seem to answer is, why did the FBI get involved? Well, because this wasn't, a typical case that the FBI is known to get involved in. But because it was right on state lines, if someone took her across state lines, then of course that's obviously, a reason for the FBI to be involved. But if she's abducted or kidnapped, they could be involved as well. But there was no evidence of that at this time. And normally, if there's no evidence of that, the FBI isn't going to come and help. But with that being said, I think things are different today than they were back then, because today now all you have to do as a jurisdiction is actually ask about help, and the FBI will step right in, as we have seen in Delphi. So, and I just want to remind everybody, as a friendly reminder, I do the best possible research. Yes, she was 17 years old. I do the best possible research before I do any of my videos or any of my live streams. I rely on news outlets, and I look through newspapers.com. I try to find as much information on the case that I'm looking at as possible. I look at anything journalists may have put out there, family members. So I understand that if some of my information may not be correct, I apologize. In the case that I ever did find false information, and one of you know that, please make sure to contact me or put it in the chat so that I can fix it. I do not want to ever spread false information about any of the cases that I cover. So the one thing that some people say is that Jeremy's dad, now Jeremy Anderson is Kimberly's sister Kristin's boyfriend. His father, excuse me, is a detective in Walton County, Florida, which is right across the state line. He called his dad, and he told his dad that the FBI needed to get involved in the case. Now, no one really knows why he said that or why he did that. That was odd to some. Now, maybe he was just trying to help the family. We don't even know if his dad had the power, to come or to do that. But regardless, there were 3 jurisdictions on this case because this girl just entirely vanished from, assumingly, her bedroom in her own home. But no one saw her come home. No one saw her leave. They couldn't even solidify a paper or proper timeline because of this. One of the first people they wanted to question was the boyfriend, because he had been a secret from the family, and he was older than her by more than 5 years. And they just felt that they really needed to talk to him. There were so many possibilities that could have happened here. He had an ex-wife who may have been upset about the relationship. Once they did find him, though, they were able to locate him and they questioned him. And according to him, they did hang out that night at his house, which was right down the street from her dad's. But she left right at her curfew at 11:30 p.m. to go home. They didn't go anywhere. They just stayed at his house. He did take a polygraph when asked to, and after that, he was cleared as a suspect or a person of interest. Just a minute. So he was even a little bit helpful in just a second, guys. I'll be right back. So sorry, guys. Did not mean to do that to you, but I have asthma, and occasionally when I do a lot of talking, I'll have an asthma attack. So I just took an inhaler and I'm good. I apologize to everyone. So, so her boyfriend was a little bit helpful in the investigation. He helped in the search parties. He helped the parents and he talked to the parents, where he just reiterated to them that he never did anything to their daughter. Nobody at this point knew what to think, and I'm sure your thought process was like mine as you're listening to this. I was looking into a secret boyfriend. You got to be kidding me. Yeah, sure. You better really check him out, especially given the age difference. But now hang on one sec. Okay, guys, I'm back. Sorry again. I think I definitely have it under control now. So the police ruled out her boyfriend. They completely cleared him after his polygraph. And as typical investigations go, they decided to polygraph the entire family and anyone who was around during the disappearance. Every single person passed, but there was one person in particular that refused to take the polygraph with strangely no reason given, and that was Kimberly's sister's boyfriend, Jeremy. So they basically could rule out every person who could have had contact with her except for Jeremy. When they started to look into Jeremy further, because of this, I understand it is completely in your rights to refuse a polygraph. we're not going there. But quite frankly, he was probably taught by his father, the detective, not to take one, I'm sure, But when the police realized that he wasn't going to take a polygraph, they started to look at him closer. They decided that they needed to delve into him a lot deeper. When they did that, they found he had a criminal history, and a lot of it was a little bit alarming. It wasn't petty crimes he was involved in. He had been involved in armed robberies and assaults, which showed he had the capability to be violent, and he also had the ability to break into a home. And because they didn't have any solid information on Jeremy, whatever, except the fact that he didn't want to take a polygraph and this alarming criminal history, that does not make him guilty of anything. So they kept on trucking in their investigation, just kept on doing stuff and investigating because, they didn't have anything to go on. So they decided, authorities, you got to remember when this crime happened in 1997. So cell phones were just starting to come into play. Most people did not have them. They were big, they were bulky. And it was just starting to get to where people wanted them. So most people still had landlines in their house, and they had to go in to the phone company and subpoena records so that they could look at the phone calls that were coming into the house or going out of the house. They wanted to see if there were any phone calls that came into the house where maybe she had a friend who invited her out. Maybe she decided to sneak out, or maybe she called someone to come and pick her up. Perhaps she tried to call 911. They didn't know. They just needed to get some sort of answers. And so they were hoping that that is what would happen. They found that there had been calls made from the house at 5:20 a.m. So there were 3 calls that had been made that morning. But again, they couldn't say if it was Kimberly. So they decided to look into the numbers themselves to see if she had called any friends. The calls were made to like an area that is only 10 to 15 minutes away from Sue's house. Now remember, Sue lives in Florida. Bye, Jerry. Thanks for stopping in. There were 3 calls made, but all the numbers were different. They all had the same area code, but the rest of the numbers were different. And when they looked deeper, these numbers didn't belong to anyone. It appeared as if they had just been put into the phone, and that was it. So the last set of numbers, the last 4 digits of that phone number was 0000. And that's not something that's very common. I found that to be quite interesting, actually. Now, Sue Kim's mother thinks this was someone frantically trying to call someone and they were very nervous and upset, very likely trying to get in touch with somebody, and they were trying different numbers. And the one thing that was interesting that they found with these phone calls were they were all hitting 10 to 15 minutes away from where Sue lived in Florida. And it just so happens that this is the area Jeremy Anderson had been the night that Kimberly went missing at a party. And this is where it's a good time for me to explain a little bit about Jeremy himself to you. Now, Jeremy's brother had a child with Sue's sister-in-law. And now, obviously, the relationship didn't go very well, and that's why she's with Sue's brother. But Jeremy is the person who would bounce the child back and forth between his brother and Sue's sister-in-law. And that's how he ended up meeting Kristin. And Jeremy was about 10 years older than Kristin. He was he was interviewed with the family, and was also became good friends with them, I guess, so to speak, because he was transporting this child back and forth between parents. And when he was at one or the other's houses, of course, they got to know him. But once he started dating Kristin, he was really involved with Kim and Kristin's family. It wasn't odd that he went with them to go look at the house after Kim went missing. But it was odd that his behavior during all of it was really, really weird. Jeremy is Kim's older sister's boyfriend. Her sister is 17 months older than her. And this is her boyfriend. And he was 10 years older than her, who had been married. He had been, it's not the same boyfriend that was also older than Kim. And he's not the one who had kids. That is Kim's boyfriend. I know it's kind of hard, but we've got to try to get those players figured out in our heads before we move forward. So his behavior was extremely odd. And like I said before, he kept touching things. He was looking at everything in the bedroom, and Sue kept having to ward him off and telling him to stop it. And she would turn around and tell him, quit it. She's like, we don't know what's gone on here. Stop touching things. And Sue remembers, even to this day, that he was like kind of hovering behind her. And then he called his dad to say the FBI needed to get involved. And it was dramatic. And it was like, no one knew what was actually going on yet. Why would he want the FBI? Why did he say the FBI needed to be involved in this case? It was just really weird. He certainly could have been just calling for help, but there are people who believe he was just trying to alert his dad of the situation. Because, as I said, he had a criminal record, and his dad always had to get him out of situations. Kristin didn't know about his criminal background. Neither did her parents. So his dad was always there to bail him out, it seemed. And it wasn't something always small, like a drug charge, a weed charge, or something like that. We're talking assaults and armed robberies. So because he had gone to his dad before to help him out of situations, and that was what many believed he was doing this time when he called his dad. Now, the most alarming thing, this was something Sue said on a podcast, was that a couple of days past Kim's going missing, Jeremy all of a sudden said he had to leave town. No explanation. He just said he needed to get out of that town. And Sue looked at him and said, You can't do that. You're going to make yourself look guilty of something. You have been here this whole time, and now you're going to run off to a different state. And she says that when she said that to him, the look on his face sent chills down her spine. And she got this overwhelmingly sick feeling in her gut, feeling that he was responsible for something. Now, they say there's a lot in mother's intuition, but yeah, I mean, something obviously is going on here. So the refusal of a polygraph, the phone calls made from Kenny's house to an area that Jeremy was known to be in that night, and they finally had their first suspect, and law enforcement told Sue that they believed that he was involved. And unfortunately, Sue had to be the one to tell Kristin. And Kristin, of course, originally didn't want to hear nothing of it. She was absolutely, no way can he be involved. Law enforcement needed to know what he was doing late Friday night and possibly when Kim went missing. And so that set them on the path to try to find out. Now, originally, his friends gave him an alibi, and they said that he was with them at a party nearly all night long in Florida. And Kristin and Sue were part of that alibi as well. And they said they had saw him on Saturday morning around 7 or 8 a.m. And this was before Sue left to go fishing. So quickly, this alibi begins to fall apart on Jeremy. Law enforcement and the FBI kept hitting his friends hard. They kept interrogating them one after another and just really hitting them hard. And they soon found out that they were covering for him. They had only been with him until 2 a.m. And between then and when Sue and Kristin saw him, he doesn't seem to have any good answers as to where he was. He changed his story a couple of times, and he said he went to a couple of different lakes, a couple of different locations. He was out looking for a party. And one was there, no one was there in any of those sites, so we left. And to law enforcement, it just didn't make any sense. It was like, this guy is not making any sense. He looks suspicious. And the FBI kept finding more information that made him look suspicious. They found out a whole lot after Kim went missing that Jeremy had been using a truck that night for some reason. He didn't want to use his own car. He dropped his own car, which was really Kristin's car, at her house and borrowed a friend's truck. Yes, this was on Friday night, in the middle of the morning of Saturday morning. And he borrowed this truck for no good reason. There was no explanation as to why he borrowed this truck. So around 6:30 a.m., just an hour after the phone calls were made, from Kenny's home, he shows up at the location where his car is parked, and he's flipping out. He is so upset. He shows up at this friend's house, and he's just losing his mind. He's like, someone needs to follow me. I have to get rid of this truck. I have to ditch it. Follow me. I'm going to drop it off, and then follow me back to get my car. No explanation to anybody, for this. He just, and the friends just are, I guess, good friends. And they're like, okay, man, we'll help you. So one of the friends did end up following him, and he ended up dropping this truck off in a church parking lot a couple of miles away from this friend's house. And then they head over to Sue's house, and Sue and Kristin see him around 7 or 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. So obviously, the authorities are wanting to know why Jeremy wanted to use a truck that was not his that night. And an hour after the phone calls are made, he ends up back in the area the phone calls were made to. And why was he so anxious to ditch this vehicle? What was going on? Why would he not just take it back to his friend where he borrowed it from? Why would you want to ditch it? What did he even tell this friend? Hey, man, I dumped your truck in a church parking lot. Sorry. I mean, it just is crazy. But unfortunately, it had been so long since Kim went missing in her disappearance that when they went to look at this truck, it had been thoroughly cleaned. It had been taken to a car wash and thoroughly cleaned. I do know from the investigation I've done that they did take a forensic examination off that truck, but we don't know what happened with that information, whether or not they found something or they didn't find something. If they did, they're keeping it close to the vest because it's nowhere to be found as to what they might have found. I know law enforcement did as much as they could because they even attempted to find where the truck had been vacuumed at, because they wanted to get the vacuum shavings so they could go through those. It was really hard to make out in the information I found and viewed whether or not they were able to actually do that or not. It was truly unclear. But based on what Sue has said, this is what happened. She's unclear if anything ever came from this, but law enforcement could be holding this information and not giving it out to the public. But at this point, they couldn't go anywhere with that info except the obvious suspicion of someone who is a suspect ditching a car. I mean, on the morning after someone goes missing and disappears forever, Jeremy goes to jail just a few months later in Florida in 1998. So their suspect was away at this point, but they had to keep searching. They had to keep working their case. They had nothing to go off of, and law enforcement kept coming back to that it had to be someone that Kim knew. It had to be someone who was close because of the timing. Kenny just happened to be out of the house that night. She bounced around between Sue and Kenny's homes, so someone had to know that she was going to be there that night. Either she let someone in or she knew or someone had a key, and all this information just kept circling back to Jeremy Anderson because everyone close to her was ruled out. He would have known she was at her dad's. Kristin actually stayed with her mom, but Jeremy actually had stayed with Kenny in June and July of this year. So he may have known Kenny's schedule. He may have known that Kenny spent every Friday night at his girlfriend's. He may have known that Kenny was going to be out and Kristin was going to be alone. And because he stayed there for 2 months, it could be he had a key. Again, no one seems to remember if he had a key or not, but Kristin has in fact told her mom many times that he did. So they just keep getting all of this suspicious information, but nothing solid to place him with Kristin. So 9 months after she disappears on her 18th birthday, the law enforcement agencies received 2 tips that authorities were led to Walton Lake back into Florida. And after 3 days of searching, they were unable to find any sign of Kimberly. Apparently, there was some kind of acid in the lake, so it made visibility very difficult to search thoroughly, but they did the best that they could. And in 2001, A group from Texas searched another area with cadaver dogs, and they apparently got multiple hits on one area, and they were able to find an engine block with a rope tied to it. And that's pretty sketchy because, you know, how do you weigh down a body? That's one way. But when the FBI came with their dogs hit on no sense at all. There have been hundreds of searches for Kim. There's been hundreds of people questioned about Kim. They have said there are multiple suspects and multiple people of interest, but they've never given any of their names except for one, and that is Jeremy Anderson. And since they have so little information on Jeremy, perhaps the other POIs they even have less on, that's why they won't give out their names. Who knows? But this case is so frustrating. And I can only imagine what it must be like for law enforcement, because they certainly have more information than we do. And but this is why they are not lacking in theories on this case, because there's so much that is unknown. And we all know that when there's unknowns, it's kind of like a vacuum that has to be filled. And so people come up with all kinds of theories, even though there may be nothing concrete to back that theory up. It's really hard to form a theory or an opinion without a definitive timeline. And I think this is one of the things that I bounce back to Delphi. It's like we have to know exactly what that timeline is. You absolutely have to know. So the bottom line here is we don't know when Kim came home. Her curfew was at 11:30. Her boyfriend said she left his house at 11:30, but we don't know the time she got home. And we don't know when she was taken either. We don't know who made the phone calls at 5:20 a.m. And every single piece of information that we are relying on in this case is in that short amount of time is just guesses. It's just the best guess that you can make to progress your case. Oh, I do too. This account, I definitely think there's some solid things. Hey Brad, how are you? So Sue's theory is that Jeremy is definitely involved in Kimberly's disappearance. Why would you right off the bat lie to the family and your girlfriend about where you were when your girlfriend's sister is missing before there's any real knowledge of what's going on? She's just missing. It is almost jumping the gun there and wanting to cover your bases really quick. And then on top of that, why would you get your friends to lie to the FBI? I mean, maybe there is something else that he was hiding, that he was a shady guy. He had, maybe he had drugs he didn't want caught with. Maybe he had just performed a robbery he didn't want to get caught for. But he didn't do any good for himself or any favors by making himself look more suspicious and being so sneaky and deceptive so early on in this case, in my opinion. But that could just be coincidental. But with everything that we know, I just don't know how likely he could be hiding something different. I think it relates to Kimberly's disappearance. Because then there's that truck. I go back to that stupid truck. I find it odd that an hour after those phone calls were made, he just happens to show up at the place the calls were to, the area 2, which happens to be in another state, acting frantic to dispose of a vehicle. I mean, why did he need a truck in the first place? No one ever got that answer. Was it common for him to ask people to use their vehicles? You know, he had his own car. He was using it as his own car. So why on earth would he need another car? So that's, you know, pretty much all the questions that I was able to ask out of the information that I got. I know that there's a lot more to get because this is just the early part of the case, and I'm going to get into the rest of it. So there obviously was going to be more lives about Kim. Oh, this account, I don't have enough subscribers yet to have super chats. I'm just hitting 700, and you have to have over 1,000 before you get to do super chats. So that's why. But anyway, I just want everybody to know that this case is really intriguing. And I really think that there's a lot here. I feel very sad for Kimberly's mother to know all these years that she's still missing. They don't have resolution. I'm sure they believe at this point in time that she's probably dead. Hey, Casper Friendly. Very nice to see you. Thank you for joining. So yeah, we're going to just continue to pray for justice for Kimberly, and I'm going to do some more digging and see. Thank you, this account. That's very kind of you. One of the things I'm going to do once I'm able to get that portion is I'm going to more than likely have a PayPal account. YouTube tends to take 30% of super chats, and I want to take the money that comes into this channel, if any, and we're going to decide once a month a charity to give it to. I know Gray Hughes does this big thing, and I'm not all about Gray Hughes, but I mean, you know, what he does is phenomenal as far as what he gives, but I'm not looking to do anything quite like that. But I thought if we could give some money to the DNA funds or some victim type charities to help solve some of these cases, I would really, really, really like to be able to help. So, I really am glad that you guys stuck with me tonight. It was a long one. I didn't expect it to be 2 hours, and I'm really sorry about my asthma attack in the middle of it. But I appreciate each and every one of you who come and watch my lives and who watch my videos. You guys are, you make it worthwhile. I never ever thought that anyone would want to really listen to what I had to say about all of this, but I'm really, really glad that, that you guys care and that you want to watch. So I appreciate every one of you. Thank you, mods, for sticking with me tonight, and everybody that came. And I will see you all again very soon. I hope you all have a good night, and please stay safe out there. Yes, little Pookie, I certainly am. I would really, really like to do that. I would like to get something going with that in some way. I don't know. I saw a petition today, Pookie, that came through my Twitter. I think it was about Delphi and the DNA familial testing. And there was I know that the petition was started 4 years ago. So I haven't been able to pay attention on whether or not that's actually happened in Indiana. I don't think it has. But maybe it has. I'm going to have to check into that to find out. But anyway, thank you guys for hanging in there with me tonight. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Good night and be safe out there.